to the first Illinois LGBTQ, the Democratic candidates for governor. I am so excited I can't even say it clearly. So can we give, in the hall, can we give a loud round of applause for the candidates tonight? So as I welcome you tonight, my name is Anthony Galloway. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement for Equality Illinois. It's great to see you all here tonight in this historic church, the Second Presbyterian Church. I must say, everyone associated with the church tonight has been absolutely wonderful to work with. It has been such an honor to work with the pastor and the staff in making sure that this evening goes off without a hitch. So I'm very excited about that. So before we formally begin the forum, I just want to take the opportunity to welcome you here tonight. It's such an honor to be in a room full of great people who are interested in our political process. If you need ASL services tonight, as you see, we have interpreters here on your left side of the church. Please feel free to move to that side of the church to take full advantage of their services. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the sponsoring organizations tonight. I would like to thank Affinity Community Services. Thank you so much for sponsoring this event with us. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank Alma. Thank you for being here tonight. But not last but not least, but Pride Action Tank, a program of the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. And last but not least, my own Equality Illinois. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the other host organizations that were involved in making tonight happen. I want to thank my colleagues at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, CALOR, Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus, Howard Brown Health, HRC Chicago, the LGBT Chamber of Commerce of Illinois, Peoria Proud, the Phoenix Center of Springfield, Prairie Pride Coalition of Bloomington Normal, Rainbow Cafe LGBT Youth Center of Carbondale, Illinois, the Southside Help Center, Writers, Planners, and Trainers of my hometown of East St. Louis, and the Alphas of the Quad Cities. So can we give them all a round of applause? Again, I want to thank the church tonight, the Second Presbyterian Church tonight, and I want to invite the senior pastor, Pastor David Neff, to come up and give us some brief remarks.
So I welcome you tonight. This church is known as the Church of Angels. There are 175 angels in this sanctuary. And if you come back during the day, you'll see them in all their full radiance and beauty. This church is also celebrating its 175th year of existence. And so it's a wonderful time for this congregation. 4 days a week, we serve lunches to our neighbors. We serve 12,000 lunches a year. We do a winter coat drive and food drive 3 days a week. We have docents that lead tours of this arts and crafts sanctuary. On Wednesday nights, we provide tutoring for neighborhood children. And we are a congregation that is fully and solidly committed to LGBTQ rights and the full inclusion of all God's people in church and in society. Our session unanimously celebrates same-sex marriages, and we will even bake the wedding cake if you need one. So we want to invite you to join us for worship on Sunday mornings and join this multicultural and diverse congregation. Tonight, as we gather together, we are here for a holy reason. Can you feel the strength in this audience? Can you feel the unity? 60 years ago, Illinois' favorite son, Adlai Stevenson, wrote that in a democracy, people get the kind of government they deserve. So we want a government that works. And we want to believe in a government that works for all people and not just some. We want a government that serves the big picture and not special interest or short-term interest groups. So Anthony asked me to begin this discussion tonight with a moment of silence. So could we join for just a moment to prepare our minds and hearts? May our words be true, and the understanding that comes from being together elevate our action to seek love and justice in our world. Welcome to Second Presbyterian Church.
So thank you so much for that, Pastor. So a few housekeeping things. We cannot start a program without a few housekeeping things. If there are exits to the back, obviously, exits to this way. We also want to let you know that this is a very historic building. So that means the restrooms are few, right? So if you go through the back doors here, you can take advantage of the restrooms. Tonight, the restrooms are all gender restrooms. We are so excited to have you civically engaged and involved in this historic event. This is believed to be the first statewide LGBTQ forum ever in the state of Illinois, addressing the issues of impact for LGBTQ people. So what we want to do is we want to give the candidates the opportunity to answer our questions, and we ask that folks are courteous during their answers. After the forum, you will be invited to join us in the fellowship hall to meet and greet with all of the candidates. Now I'm going to pause for a moment and invite our statewide folks from all across the state to join us. Welcome to the live stream audience to the Illinois LGBTQ Forum and the Democratic candidates for governor. I am Anthony Galloway, Director of Civic Engagement at Equality Illinois at the Second Presbyterian Church in Chicago, where we have a crowded sanctuary ready to hear from the candidates. Right now, I am so pleased and honored to introduce our moderator for this evening, Brian C. Johnson, CEO of Equality Illinois.
Can you hear me now? Thank you, Anthony. Good evening. So I actually grew up Catholic, and the response that I just heard was what I think of as the Sunday morning Catholic mumble. But we're in a Presbyterian church. We are a group of LGBTQ activists. Let's try this again. Good evening. I love that. All right, so as a reminder, every candidate who publicly declared their candidacy by June 9th was invited to participate in tonight's forum, conditioned on their filing the requisite nominating paperwork with the state by the December 4th deadline. 5 candidates have met these conditions, and each of those candidates are here tonight. Please welcome the candidates in the following order. J.B. Pritzker. Superintendent Bob Daiber. Oh. Are we coming? J.B. Pritzker, Superintendent Bob Daiber, Senator Daniel Biss, Tio Hardiman, and Chris Kennedy. I will say Superintendent Bob Daiber was driving in from downstate, and he said he will be here shortly. So when he gets here, we will welcome him to the panel. So thank you to the hundreds of people here in this historic church this evening, and thank you to the estimated 200 Illinoisans who are watching in the 6 viewing locations in Carbondale, East St. Louis, Normal, Peoria, the Quad Cities, and Springfield. We, as we've said, are here at Chicago's historic Second Presbyterian Church, a national historic landmark for a church which was first organized in 1842. And among those who have worshiped or spoken here were Robert Todd Lincoln, President Grover Cleveland, and Booker T. Washington. And tonight, we are also doing something historic, holding the first forum for statewide candidates focused on LGBTQ issues. So your hosts here and in the watch events around the state believe it is critically important that we double down in our fight for LGBTQ civil rights in Illinois. Our questions tonight, just so you know where they came from, were formulated based on topics that people from around the state have emailed us. And they will be asked tonight by our co-moderators, who I will ask to stand up as I introduce them. The fearless Imani Rupert Gordon of Affinity Community Services.
All right.
The incomparable Kenny Martin Ocasio of ALMA, the Association of Latinos, Latinas Motivating Action, and the unprecedented Kim Hunt of Pride Action Tank. So for the audience, a little bit more of how things will work. As agreed to by the organizers and the campaigns, we will start each round of questions with a different candidate. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. And candidates, I'm not shy, so I will cut you off. If one candidate mentions another candidate here, I will offer that candidate up to 30 seconds to reply if they so desire. After the first wave of long-form questions, I will take a break to lead the candidates through a lightning round of questions before we return to a second and final round of long-form questions, and then we will conclude with 90-second closing statements. I also just want to name that 90 minutes is not enough time to address the myriad and diversity of concerns our community has, and we honor that. That's why when we are done here, hopefully around 7:30, we invite those of you who are with us into the fellowship hall to meet and greet the candidates, and the fellowship hall is behind these doors. Okay, let's get started. So by random drawing held just before we began, Mr. Pritzker will be the first to answer our opening question. The opening question for all candidates: what has been your commitment to the LGBTQ community prior to your run for governor, and how will the lives of LGBTQ Illinoisans be improved if you are governor?
Well, thank you very much, Brian, and thanks to all the hosting organizations here tonight. The values of inclusiveness and fighting for what's right were imbued in me as a child by my mother, who was an LGBTQ advocate in the mid-1970s in San Francisco. I've stood with you long before it was politically safe or commonplace, even for Democrats, to support civil and human rights for the LGBTQ community. So decades ago, I was marching in the Chicago Pride Parade before it was a celebration, when it was truly a protest march. And 20 years before it was legal in the state of Illinois, my wife and I hosted a gay wedding in our backyard, not because we were trying to make a statement, but because we had two good friends who were in love with one another. And I was one of the very first people to support the first openly gay elected circuit court judge in Cook County, Tom Chiola, and one of the first to support the first openly gay state representative in Illinois, Larry McKeon. Now, I want you to know that I believe that we need a governor in Illinois who will be a true partner with you. If you elect me governor, I'll have your back. I believe I've demonstrated for decades now that I'll be that true partner. And as a result, imagine what we can do together. Imagine it. Thank you.
Senator Biss.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Equality Illinois, and thank you to my many extraordinary friends and partners in this room and watching online. I'm Daniel Biss. I'm state senator in the 9th District. I'm running for governor, and I'm not going to say what I have done for the community so much as to thank the community for giving me the honor of working with you to advance our shared values. When I sponsored the bill making Illinois one of the first states to ban so-called conversion therapy, and we shouldn't call it therapy, by the way. When I passed that bill, I had the honor of working with an extraordinary group of young survivors whose voices had been silenced, much as their identities had been questioned by their own families. And they carried the flag. They explained the issue. They taught our community, and I was honored to be a vessel for their work. When I worked with my running mate, Leticia Wallace, to ban the so-called gay panic defense. You can't kill someone and then go and claim that you should be acquitted because they were a member of the LGBTQ community. That was Equality Illinois and advocates from around the state working, and I had the honor to work with you. When I'm governor, the LGBTQ community's voice will be loud. The LGBTQ community will be represented in our cabinet. We will advance a constitutional amendment to put LGBTQ equality in the Illinois Constitution so we don't have to fight about bathrooms and locker rooms, one school district at a time. And we will fight for truly universal health care for every resident of Illinois, and yes, every member of the LGBTQ community when it comes to HIV, when it comes to transgender health, and when it comes to all of their needs. I appreciate the partnership, and I look forward to this night's debate. Thank you.
Mr. Hardiman, if I could. You are next. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure Superintendent Daiber can come up to the. We'll put him next to Mr. Kennedy. So we'll just use this as the order here. So thank you, Mr. Hardiman. And welcome, Superintendent Daiber.
Okay, here we go. I'm Tio Hardiman. I'm running for governor. This is my second run for governor. In 2014, we secured close to 30% of the state vote. When it comes down to supporting the LGBT community, I'm not a stranger to supporting this particular community. One of my good friends, we were growing up, his name was Little Stevie. He was gay, and a lot of people used to try to bully him, and I took up for him all the time. It's documented. There was also a time in Austin, I'm also known as Mr. Ceasefire. We intervened in 2 potentially deadly conflicts on the west side of Chicago. This is documented as well, where 2 guys were trying to take the lives of 2 transgender women, and I intervened and saved their lives, and they went on the record and did a few interviews on how we intervened in their lives. So as your governor, what I would like to do, and I want to make this crystal clear to everybody, I'm running to become the first black governor of the state of Illinois, the first minority governor, not because I'm black only, because I'm qualified. I just want to make that clear. I would like for people to think out of the box, let's do something different. But when it comes down to the LGBT community, I plan to support you on every level to the best of my ability. And my running mate, her name is Patricia Avery. She's a former president of the NAACP in Champaign-Urbana and a former county commissioner in Champaign-Urbana. So I understand the issues, and I plan to take these issues all the way to the top of my administration. I have a young man named Maddox that works for my campaign out of Rogers Park, and he's a member of the LGBT community. And I know I have a lot of friends in the LGBT community, so I will stand up as a champion for all people as human beings and do the right thing. I'm Tio Hardiman. I'm running for governor. I need your support. And I always say this, and everybody that I'm running with, they know I got a little sense of humor. By a show of hands, how many people are going to vote for me? I'm just messing with you. And I want to thank everybody that's watching on the live stream, and I appreciate being here. And I want to thank the conveners, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll take that mic.
I think he wants the.
Mr. Kennedy, does your mic work?
Is my mic? It
Yes.
sounds like it's working.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for having me here, having all of us. This is an incredible room. Like one of the most beautiful places any of us have been for one of the debates. And it's beautiful not because of the architecture, but because of the people who filled the room tonight. So thank you for turning out, and it's great to be with you. So I'm one of Bobby and Ethel Kennedy's kids. I'm one of 11 children. My wife is, Sheila's one of 5. She has 30 first cousins. I have more than 50. When you have a big family like that, almost all aspects of American life are represented. So in our family, we have members of the LGBTQ community, gay men and women, gender fluid members of our family as well. We believe that families should show great loyalty, and we believe that government should be an extension of family. And when government doesn't behave, we try to react. In the early 1990s, when the state of Colorado passed terrible legislation, we joined the boycott immediately. When Sheila and I, after we got married, after a little bit of parish shopping, which isn't strictly legal in the Catholic Church, we found a Catholic priest who would speak from the pulpit and talk about being openly gay, and that was important to us. I think about my first years at the Merchandise Mart, when I started my career in the early 1980s, mid-1980s. The AIDS, HIV epidemic was going on, and the Reagan administration did nothing to stop it. We lost close personal friends. Something that we didn't understand until much later was encouraged by and not stopped by the government. When I was running the Merchandise Mart, I wanted to stop that. So in all of the events, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but we ran trade shows all over the United States, and each and every one of them, we used them as a platform to raise money for awareness around HIV and AIDS prevention and research. So the
Mr.
big
Kennedy,
trade
your
show.
time is winding up for this.
Okay, thank you all very
Thank you.
much. There you go.
Superintendent Daiber, make sure that you heard the question that we shared. I know we shared it with you before. What has been your commitment to the LGBTQ community prior to your run for governor, and how will the lives of LGBTQ Illinoisans be improved if you are governor?
Thank you,
have 90
Brian.
seconds.
And I apologize for being late. I had a tire issue getting here, so but glad to be here and got here as soon as I can. For 28 years, I've been involved in public education and looked at the rights of all students. And I'm proud of the fact that I was the first and only regional superintendent in the state of Illinois to hold a summit a year ago on transgender students' rights. And I felt very strong about that because it was a big issue that was being dealt with in many of our public schools in the state of Illinois, to make sure that those students' rights are upheld. And as governor, I will see that policies for students and for all people are treated fairly, equally, and with dignity. You know, I learned so much in the last year with the LGBTQ community and introduced to so many wonderful people at last year's Equality Gala that helped shape my vision as to what I see an all-inclusive Illinois for the future should be about, and about how those individuals that are so involved in your organization and your community should be part of an administration, which I would be inclusive of. So how will this community be better if I'm governor? It will be part of the administration. It will be part of policy making. It will be part of shaping what our Illinois will look like for the 21st century. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to this evening. Thank you, Brian.
Our next question will be asked by Imani Rupert Gordon.
Thank you. Can you hear me? So this question comes from Harold in East St. Louis. Healthcare is a particularly challenging area for LGBTQ people. In 2016, the CDC issued a report that in their lifetime, 1 in 2 Black gay men will be diagnosed with HIV. At the same time, critical health services such as the AIDS Drug Assistance Program have been imperiled because of the state's budget crisis. As governor, how do you plan to address the particular HIV healthcare issues and the broader healthcare needs of the LGBTQ people in Illinois?
The candidate to go first is Senator Biss.
Thank you for that question. It's such an important question, and there's a whole series of things that we must do. I was proud to be a sponsor of a bill to guarantee access to PrEP. We have to make sure that we're enhancing access through all the different streams wherein state government touches healthcare to the various forms of healthcare services needed. That means Medicaid. It also means regulating private insurance. It also means insurance packages that are given to state employees. It also means proper funding of our state programs themselves. The 2-year, 6-day budget impasse that Bruce Rauner caused resulted in devastating cuts to a variety of human service programs, and we had to fight hard for ADAP. We had to fight hard for merely rock bottom, almost adequate restoration, when in fact we ought to be increasing funding. But I think we also need to step back for a moment and ask ourselves, in an environment where, as you said, 1 in 2 African American gay men, in an environment where the health crises are fundamentally unjustly distributed across our society, unjustly distributed by race, unjustly distributed by wealth, unjustly distributed, yes, by sexual orientation and gender identity, we have to ask ourselves if we want to have a full commitment to truly universal health care. That's what we need. That's the way to avoid this haggling. That's the way to avoid a situation where one good governor will increase the ADAP line and another bad governor will result in a new budget impasse.
And
That's why we need single-payer health care in Illinois. That's what I'm going to fight for.
Thank you.
Quickly, when it comes down to health care for all people in the state of Illinois, right now we have close to 900,000 people uninsured here in Illinois, and as your governor, I plan to make sure that everybody's insured. We are Medicare for everybody, single-payer health care. My brother, Tio Hardiman, passed away from the HIV virus himself many, many years ago. So it hit home with me personally. I did some work with an epidemiologist who did a lot of work in Uganda. So as the governor, I plan to lead the charge when it comes down to public education information and making sure that we distribute information out about the pitfalls of being involved in not protecting yourself. You know, people have to learn how to protect themselves so they won't really contract the virus. That's very important. But there were some successes in Uganda because of a strong public education effort to reduce the levels of HIV spreading the virus. And also, as your governor, I want to make this crystal clear. We have to do something in the Illinois Department of Corrections to address the issues there and make sure people are protected in the Illinois Department of Corrections. So I'll be your governor/sheriff as well, because when I become the governor, I plan to change policy in the Illinois Department of Corrections to make sure that young men are protected, especially African American men, because it's not right. Our people are struggling. That's the reason why I'm running for governor, as a wake-up call for all communities, but especially for the African American community. We're losing people in Chicago. 36,000 African-American people moved out of Chicago in 2016. 180,000 African-American people moved out of Chicago over the last 15 years. We have a crisis going on with HIV, sexually transmitted diseases, and somebody has to take this bull by the horn and deal with it, and that's Mr. Tio Hardiman, your next governor. So that's my response for you. All right? All right.
Nice, Tio. I think one of the most important things that we can do in the state of Illinois is protect Obamacare, because in there is enormous protections for the LGBTQ community. The governor can play an enormous role in the outcomes of all our congressional elections, and they can make it clear to our congressional delegation that if they don't protect Obamacare, that the state of Illinois is going to be very upset with them. I think there are other things that we can do that are obvious and important. You look at the state of Florida working on a plan to provide free PrEP for anybody in a high-risk category. We ought to, if they can do it in Florida, we ought to be able to do it here. The idea that you have to go, the only place outside of Chicago, Peoria, where you can get therapy that should be available in every community in Illinois. The fact is that we underfund mental health, and almost no community needs more mental health services than the LGBTQ community because of the enormous pressures that they're subject to. And in the city of Chicago, we closed half the mental health care facilities. If we believe that we should care for a broken arm, then our community ought to believe that we should care for a mind that's in trouble as well. I think that what we need more than anything is leadership in our state. And if the LGBTQ community is represented in state government, all of the things that I've just described will occur, and it'll be represented if I'm the governor. Thank you very much.
Well, first and foremost, we know that the population that we're talking about is a vulnerable population that in some instances is denied health care services. So we have got to prevent any population, whether it's black males or white males or whoever, denied health services. And we have to make those health services available and accessible to those communities. We also need to provide, I think has been already stated, readily available community services, because whether or not we have affordable health care, which I strongly support, and I support a single payer plan as well, to provide health care for all populations, but we need to have community outreach centers in which black males, white males, females, etc., can go to community health service centers for immediate health needs. And that will help stop the spread of HIV in our communities, as well as outreach educational services by which we help to educate our populations to prevent the spread of HIV. And that's what I will do as governor.
Thank you. Mr. Pritzker.
LGBTQ health services are under siege by Bruce Rauner. Let's face it, 2 years and 6 days without a budget has meant cuts in services that weren't good enough to begin with and now have been cut to the bone. So the very first thing we need to do is step up to the plate and fund a budget that makes sure that we get PrEP and that we make sure, and we have to be responsive to HIV testing and to make sure that we're treating people with AIDS. But ladies and gentlemen, you can't get that unless we have a progressive income tax in this state. That's how we're going to pay for the services that we need. You also need a governor who's going to stand up against that racist, misogynist, xenophobe Donald Trump and his partner, Mike Pence. And I've been doing that for 2 years, and I'm not going to stop. You've got to have a governor that's protecting the people of Illinois and the LGBTQ community. I've been doing that for decades, and I'll continue to do it for LGBTQ services. And thank you for the question, and to the people in East St. Louis who sent us that question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be asked by Kenny Martin Ocasio.
Thanks, Brian, and good evening, candidates. This question comes from Jan in Chicago's Brownsville neighborhood. A 2017 report authored by the Center for American Progress, Movement Advance Project, and Youth First describes LGBTQ youth, many of whom are youth of color, as overrepresented in the juvenile justice system. The report found that nearly 40% of girls in juvenile detention centers identify as lesbian, gay, and bisexual. For LGBTQ youth in juvenile detention centers, many face inadequate resources, support structures, healthcare, and also face mistreatment by staff and by other youth because of their sexual orientation and or gender expression. As governor, what would be your plan to address the overrepresentation and mistreatment of LGBTQ people and youth of color in the criminal justice system?
Start with Mr. Hardiman.
Yeah. Like first and foremost, like I said previously, I've been standing up a champion for people from all walks of life. Can you hear me? Okay, my mic was on. I don't know what happened. All right, here we go.
I've always been a champion speaking up for the underdog throughout my entire life. I was born and raised in the heart of the ghetto people. You hear me on the projects in the Avalon Park community. So when it comes down to standing up for children and teenagers from the LGBT community, I plan to really champion that cause once again, because I've been doing it before I decided to run for governor. We don't just need a governor that's going to stand up to Donald Trump. We need a governor that's going to stand up to Rahm Emanuel as well here in Chicago. Just to be honest with you, we need a governor that's going to stand up to Rahm Emanuel and his failed policies here in Chicago, okay? So that's what I would do, because like me being an African-American male coming from the community, I understand all the problems associated with African-American people nationwide. I know about the disparities in over-incarceration. We represent 15% of the population in Chicago, but we represent 60% of the prison population in Illinois. We need a lot of help. And don't get me wrong, even though I'm African American, I'm running for everybody. I plan to step up because I look at everybody as human beings. We we must stand up to this clarion call for action in the state of Illinois. So I plan to set forth a task force to take a look at how people are being treated from the LGBT community in juvenile centers and the Illinois Department of Corrections and make immediate changes. Governor Rauner just stated that he was not in charge. So my recommendation to Governor Rauner, you need to step aside and let a real leader take charge here in Illinois. All right? Thank you very much.
So I think in the United States, it's obvious to everyone that we've criminalized poverty. That if you show up for a court, you can't make bail, the judge who set that bail is going to set your sentence. We know that we've criminalized race. We know that African Americans are presumed to be guilty by a police officer, whether they're white or black. That a judge is more apt to find an African American guilty than a white suspect and to sentence them to longer sentences. Just like we've criminalized poverty, just like we've criminalized race, we've criminalized sexual orientation. You cannot have 40% of women in prison self-report that they're identifying as members of the LGBTQ community and believe that our system is fair. The fact is we have very little data, and we don't research it. When I was growing up, probably in America, people thought 3% of all Americans were members of the LGBTQ community. It's much easier to discriminate against 3% of the population than against 7%. And we need more and greater research, but in prison there's so many things that we can do. And there's so many things we can do in the criminal justice system. The thing about race, the thing about poverty is that we know how to counteract those. Just as we can counteract those prejudices, we can do it with the LGBTQ community as well. We can provide training to our police officers, restore community policing in Chicago, which has been decimated. We can make sure that people in prison have access to the medication, whether that's hormone replacement therapy or other meds. We can make sure that every prison guard has sensitivity training. We know how to fix the problem, and we're doing nothing to fix it, and that's immoral.
Superintendent Daiber.
If we are truly going to address the issue of this population facing incarceration, we have to address the issues we have with the Juvenile Justice Council. And we have to have members of the LGBTQ community as part of that review process to make sure we get it right. No one up here on the stage can do it alone. No one can do it alone. That's why an inclusive administration, which includes your community in that policy making, will get it right. And that's what my administration will do. It will get it right. And to help young people that face this, whether they're boys or whether they're girls, they need to feel wanted and needed in society, and that has to happen through their mentors. And we need mentoring in our schools. We need mentoring in our culture to help young people find a place, find what their fullest potential is, to live productive lives and to achieve greatness, whether they're part of the LGBTQ community or they're not. They all have a right to succeed and a right to success.
Okay. Mr. Pritzker.
Thank you. Very importantly, that question was aimed, I think, specifically at juveniles and at girls that are in the system. We have criminal justice challenges that we've got to meet. A criminal justice reform is truly needed in the state of Illinois for everyone, but specifically for juveniles, because there is an enormous challenge of our schools to prison pipeline. We've got to end that. And we've got to keep kids out of prison, keep them out of the juvenile justice system. It's one of the reasons that I endowed the Child and Family Justice Center at Northwestern University, which, by the way, got a bill passed in Springfield that gives kids an opportunity to have their records expunged after 2 years automatically. Now, transgender individuals, kids and adults alike, are the most abused in prison. They're the ones who receive beatings. They're the ones who are most targeted, and sometimes by guards themselves. It's training that's required. We've got to make sure that we've got corrections officers who understand the issues and are making sure that that community is protected, and when needed, are offered health care services in the prison system.
Senator Biss.
We've got to think about the two parts of this problem. The first part is to acknowledge that among the overrepresented LGBTQ community that is currently incarcerated, community members are not treated the way they ought to be in prison. That is partially in terms of treatment from other people who are currently incarcerated. It's partially about treatment from DOC staff, and it's partially about access to services, especially healthcare. So to fix this, you need clear policies and strong training programs for every single person, from the top warden to every single correctional officer who comes in contact with people who are incarcerated. That's number one. Number two, you gotta realize that the fact of that number is an indication that something is fundamentally broken in our policing on the streets, in the way that our criminal justice system works in the courts, and the way, yes, that our criminal justice system interacts with our schools. Because yes, we have criminalized marginalized communities, whether it's by criminalizing blackness or criminalizing brownness or criminalizing membership in the LGBTQ community, and that has everything to do with the way that our law enforcement officials act. So I'm so proud of the work that my running mate Leticia Wallace has done to mandate training for officials regarding unconscious bias, to help them understand that they bring to the workplace biases that result in fundamentally unfair treatments of individuals from different communities. We need that kind of training, and we need a criminal justice system that is fundamentally about restoration and re-entry, not about creating categories of people that we then seek to punish and lock up. These transformations are profound, but they are doable. And the most important way to do them is to have every action rooted in the fundamental idea that we haven't been treating everyone as though they are fully human, and it's time for us to acknowledge and respect and love the humanity of every single person, regardless of how they're currently interacting with the criminal justice system.
Senator Biss, your time. Thank you. And our last question before the lightning round will be asked by Kim Hunt.
This question comes from Jennifer in Highland Park. As a proud parent of an 11-year-old transgender daughter, our family recognizes how fortunate we are to live in a supportive community with school districts that have robust gender-inclusive policies. But we know that's not the case for hundreds of families in our state who are raising these incredible young people while battling daily fear and discrimination. Fear that's fueled by a steady drumbeat of destructive and misguided decisions on a national level. How will you help accelerate the progress for equal rights for our children? And what message would you give these families and my daughter who are watching you this evening?
Begin with Mr. Kennedy.
I think that's the most awesome question there is. I think if we figure out the answer to that question, everything else solves itself. That's what I think. I think we want every parent to believe that if they have a gay child, transgender child, a child who's gender fluid, that this is the best state in America in which to raise that kid. That's what I think our goal should be. It's a simple goal, and it's a model of clarity. That's all we want. We want that parent to think, oh yeah, I'm so lucky I live in Illinois. Do they think that today? Or are they gonna wait till that kid's 18, move to the coast? I mean, there are other states that do a better job. We do the best job in the Midwest, that's what I would guess. But there are other states that are much more inclusive in grade school, high school, where a kid can go to school and not fear being taunted or beaten, humiliated. Can go in just to learn and feel part of a greater community where sex education is designed to inform kids, all kids, about what's happening in our world. And we don't do that in Illinois. Illinois is really strange because if you compare graduation rates from college, the LGBTQ community graduates at a lower rate than the rest of the population in Illinois, but at a higher rate in New England and in the states along the Pacific. That's an incredible marker, and we need to get at that issue. We need to understand why is that occurring. And so much of it occurs because we fail to nurture young people, and we subject them to incredible abuse, to a level of humanity that we wouldn't want ourselves subjected to.
Mr.
And
Kennedy,
it doesn't
your
have to
time.
be like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be like that.
I'm going to begin with the back part of the question as to what I would tell the young girl. I would tell her to be proud. I would tell her to be strong. I'd tell her to lead and to demonstrate what she is about so that others may follow her and may express how they feel in the light of her. And I commend her parents for their support to her. But I want to tell you what I have done. I've mentioned it and what I'll continue to do. To protect these rights of these students, I said I held a transgender summit to make sure that the legal rights in schools were upheld. And some of my colleagues couldn't believe I was doing it because I was the first person to come out and do this, because we had school districts throughout the state of Illinois questioning the rights of these students, like the 11-year-old girl, okay? So someone had to lay out the legal parameters that these young people had those rights. And from that experience, I'll continue to do those things as governor. I'll continue to make sure that young people of all genders have rights and have freedom of expression of those rights, and will not be bullied in school, and will not be discriminated against in school, and will have the opportunities to go on and be successful through college and through their adult life in society. And that's how we will build a great Illinois for the future.
Mr. Pritzker.
Well, I want to thank Jennifer for the question, and also the school district for standing up and protecting Jennifer's child in that district. But kids all across Illinois are going to school, transgender kids, afraid. Some of them not going to school at all and dropping out. And in fact, the suicide rate is high among transgender children. So we need to protect those children, not just in the wealthy communities like Highland Park, but all across the state of Illinois. It's not just in Chicago, everywhere, Carbondale and Rockford and Champaign. I mean, we need to stand up for them. And how are we going to do that? Well, as governor, I'm going to direct the Illinois State Board of Education to set guidelines for schools. And then we've got to make sure that those schools live up to those guidelines, because there's nothing more important than protecting the children of this state, transgender or not.
Senator Biss.
To Jennifer, I would say thank you. We love you. We love your transgender child. We admire your love and support for your transgender child, and we know the fear that you know. We know the fear that you know about whether or not your child will be accepted in the school district today or in the school district tomorrow, in the college or the workplace after that. We know the statistics you've read because we've read them too, about the future that awaits transgender children who are not supported and loved by, yes, their parents, but also their communities and also their schools. And we're here to transform society so those fears will become an ugly, ugly, ugly history. Part of what we have to do is to amend the Constitution to protect gender identity and sexual orientation so we don't have to fight school district by school district. I've been proud to fight in school district after school district for sane policies, but that's not good enough. It needs to be in the Constitution. There shouldn't be any government form in the state of Illinois where you got to check the box male or female. There shouldn't be one, because the act of telling someone you got to check one of those two boxes is the act of telling someone you are not fully a citizen. It's not right. It's not right. We need to make sure that all healthcare needs of the transgender community are fully met, universally met on all occasions. And we need to educate everybody everywhere. We need to stand up to misgendering when we see it happen. We need to lift up the brave, openly transgender people who go through life knowing that they are putting themselves at risk of assault or attack, and we have to stand with them, shoulder to shoulder. We have to support members of the transgender community who either don't feel safe being openly transgender or just don't want to, quietly in other ways, as allies who, in my case, as a cisgender man, acknowledges my privilege and uses my privilege to help lift up voices who don't have that. We can do these things. We have to do these things, and we have to do them now.
Mr. Hardiman, yeah. We'll do belts and suspenders on
We
this.
just go with the
Thank you for
microphone
your
here.
patience.
Now, the reality is, Governor, we have to pass policies that work for everybody. I'm one of the only candidates sitting up here that experienced discrimination and racism in my personal life. So I would like for your daughter to know, as governor, I plan to take her by the hand and lead the charge. You know, they have the Leave No Child Behind Act, Leave No Transgender Child Behind as well. We have to stand up for everybody. And I'm not saying this just to get a round of applause. I'm saying this because I'm sincere about standing up for the underdog, the people that are being taken advantage of. We have to stand up every step of the way. I got a chance to visit a restaurant in Benton, Arkansas some years ago, right? And basically, things happened, you know. Basically, I sat down in the restaurant, they didn't come out and serve me, right? They didn't serve me. So that was a situation of racism, you know, that was up front. And I didn't really know how to respond to it. I don't wear my feelings on my sleeve. So I say, well, what's going on? So they said, well, you know, they didn't even respond and talk to me. I sat there for 30 minutes, and then they left out of there, right? And I mean, I left out. I did not get served, so I experienced some racism there. And even though I'm running for governor as an African-American candidate, I'm saying this for a reason. Even in this race, the mainstream media continues to cover, no offense to the guys up here, but they continue to cover everybody but Tio Hardiman. Even though I got 30% of the state vote in 2014, they covering the, you know, the big money candidates. They will not give me my props as it relates to my run for governor. But I'm not caught up in that because we're going to keep marching forward anyway. But I want everybody from the transgender community, the LGBTQ community, to understand that I've been in your shoes, but in a different way. I've been there. I've experienced racism, discrimination, and I just don't like it when I hear about it, so we have to do something about it. So I want your daughter and everybody watching to know that I'm going to take you by the hand and lead the charge for you, okay? That's what I plan to do, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Hardiman.
All right.
So we have a few lightning round questions. Each candidate gets up to 10 seconds to answer each question. Bonus points for one-word answers. First question, we'll start with Superintendent Daiber. Will you commit tonight that if elected governor, you will hire highly qualified transgender Illinoisans into senior positions in your administration?
Yes.
Mr. Pritzker?
Yes, and I've done that in my campaign too.
Senator Biss?
Yes, and they'll have key leadership roles.
Mr. Hardiman?
Yes, I already have some, you know, members of the LGBT community working for the campaign right now.
Thank
I will
you.
definitely hire people in my administration.
Great. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Great. Next question. We thought these were easy. Mr. Pritzker, we'll start with you. Will you commit tonight that if elected governor, you will hire highly qualified lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer Illinoisans into senior positions in your administration?
Yes, and I have.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with Senator Biss. Will you commit tonight that if elected governor, you will appoint openly LGBTQ people to significant state boards and commissions?
Absolutely.
For sure again.
Yes.
Yes, I said that in my opening statement.
Yes.
Great. Mr. Hardiman, we'll start with you. Last one in the lightning round. If you secure the Democratic nomination for governor, will you commit to attending an LGBTQ candidate forum alongside the Republican nominee for governor before November's general election?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I plan to win this nomination, without a doubt. I'm looking forward to it. That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
It could be lonely, but I will.
Yes, and I hope he shows up.
Or she. Or
No,
she.
That's right.
That's right. Yes, and I can hardly wait.
Yes, I'll be there regardless of whether I'm the nominee, but the good news is I'll be the nominee.
All right, lightning round. Our next wave of questions, we will turn it over to Imani, who is asking this question. And Mr. Kennedy, you will be the first one to answer. We're going to do a little handoff here with Mr. Hardiman. Thank you.
Okay, this question comes from Rashida, a 73-year-old senior from Bronzeville. A recent study from the National Senior Citizens Law Center reported that 80% of LGBTQ older adults and their care providers don't feel that that LGBTQ people can live openly in care settings without experiencing discrimination. As governor, what would you do to create more affordable and inclusive housing opportunities for aging LGBTQ people?
Do I need the...
No, we're just gonna.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Tio, don't use that while I'm talking. I think from cradle to grave, the underfunding, underplanning, under-thoughtfulness of the state government and the city government around LGBTQ issues is incredible. And it doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't. People shouldn't go to sleep at night worried about what's going to happen to them when they get older. There are things that we can do. We can adopt ideas that have been pioneered in other states, provide great housing opportunities for people as they get older. But this government in our city, the government in our state, that's not the way they're thinking. You think about Bronzeville alone. They've closed a school in Bronzeville every year, once a year for 18 years. That's not a government that believes in communal action. That's not a government that says we want to protect the people who are part of our large American family. The idea that we have to wrestle with issues about how to provide long-term housing that's been fixed in other states, where we can simply adopt the formulas that have worked elsewhere, that's not how it ought to be in Illinois. All you have to do is take the learning that we've created here, important populations, and replicate that so that everybody has a home in Illinois. The issue here is that, we don't want to die alone. And the entire millennial generation is leaving. And that generation needs to be here to care for all of us. And if we don't turn things around, if we don't stop that outmigration of the generation that's most likely to embrace LGBTQ rights, well, we end up with a disaster. And that's where we're headed unless we change out Governor Rauner. Thank you.
Well, there should be no gender identification on real estate or on rental or on any community properties. That should not be a discriminating factor. I live in a very conservative community, but I'm proud to tell you that 2 gay lesbian ladies own my grandmother's home, and they live there proudly in our community. I participated in an event in Ridgeway, Illinois. I know you don't know where that is. Deep southern Illinois, highly conservative. 2 gay men came up to me and said, we want to invite you in our home and we want you to feel welcome to use it any time. And I want to tell you how difficult it was for us to live in this community and to purchase this house because people discriminated against them, and that's just not right. So in all of Illinois, as I've said, gender identification cannot be part of policies that are part of the Illinois Realtors Association, that are part of any organization in the state that deny anyone the right to purchase property or to rent property. As governor and as that administration we previously talked about in that rapid fire round of questions, will make sure that is possible.
Mr. Pritzker.
Let's start with, we need quality trained personnel providing senior care in this state. And I've been proud to stand with SEIU Healthcare in fighting for $15 minimum wage. That ought to be a minimum. We should attract great people to this profession, and very important to provide the training that's necessary so that there's an understanding among the personnel of all the issues that are important to LGBTQ community members among our senior population. But there's another thing. Bruce Rauner cut home care in this state significantly, the result of which is people are forced out of their homes and into a senior facility when they don't want to be. Home care is a less expensive, better option for most people. So let's fully fund our home care and make sure that seniors get the kind of services that they deserve, because they're our elders. It's our obligation.
Senator Biss.
I couldn't hear the question.
This is a really, really important question. You could tell by all the nodding and all the comments that we heard from the audience as the question was being asked. Let's just for a second put a pin in the fact that there is a much more significant, widespread problem of discrimination against LGBTQ individuals among the older generation. That's not right. That's not fair. That's a problem. We're going to talk about how to solve that problem. But it's also a sign of progress. It's a sign of the battles that we're winning. It's a sign of the work that we've done to change hearts and minds in this country. And I think we just need to talk about the extraordinary success of the movement represented by people in this church in transforming society in pretty profound ways. It doesn't mean that things are a picnic for younger members of the LGBTQ community, but it's a lot different than it used to be. Thank you for your work on that front. Now, this is one of these issues where, as some of the earlier speakers mentioned, I feel like when we make policy, we forget that there are LGBTQ people everywhere. There are wonderful retirement communities on Halsted Street that are inclusive and that are welcoming, but there are LGBTQ seniors everywhere, and we don't have the same universality. So what do we need to do? We need clear, strong, aggressive enforcement of the existing anti-discrimination laws. We need to strengthen and toughen those laws. And then we need to have the kind of well-trained, well-paid staff providing service, care in these various facilities. That's why Leticia and I have been fighting for raising wages for caregivers and for universal elder care. For universal elder care, so someone is not obligated based upon income or based upon wealth to find themselves cared for by people who are not qualified and not trained. These things are doable. Other states get them right. When I'm governor, Illinois will also.
Thank you. Right. Mr. Hardiman.
Okay. When it comes down to supporting senior citizens here in Illinois, that's a no-brainer. What I plan to do is all about how you're going to get the job done. There's a House bill right now, House Bill 453. It's the financial transaction tax, which can bring in $3 billion of new revenue here in the state of Illinois. And what I would do is sign that bill immediately and use some of those funds to support senior citizen programs for LGBT community members as well. I think it's very important because talk is cheap. People need help in Illinois. And like J.B. Pritzker was saying, how Bruce Rauner shut down a lot of the programs. It's totally unacceptable. And I don't want to come off as an angry black man. Let me make that clear, because I do have a sense of humor. My ancestors were brought over here on the bottom of slave ships. Slave ships. It took my ancestors 400 years to fight for their freedom, and I'm still fighting for reparations for my people as well. I just want to say that to you. So I would like to applaud the LGBT community, because over the last 30 years, the LGBT community has made a lot of gains, but more work has to be done. And I would like to become a part of your movement and take care of the business on every level for the seniors, the children, and everybody. A state that does not take care of their senior citizens and the children and the women, that's a state that's being led in the wrong direction. All right? And that's what I plan to do for you. And just hear me clearly, people. This is what I have in my spirit. I'm not just saying this because I'm running for governor. I'm saying this because I really mean it. I'm passionate about all people, and all people need help, and we're going to get you the help you need, the senior citizens, okay? All right.
Mr. Hardiman. Next question will be asked by Kenny.
Thanks, Ryan. This question actually comes from Marco in Elgin, and I believe Marco is watching us as well. An estimated 267,000 undocumented individuals in the U.S. identify as LGBTQ. This year, we have seen the Trump administration's outright hostility to immigrants and actions to restrict immigration. In addition to what the state and the cities are doing to protect the undocumented immigrants, what specific actions will your administration take to support the immigrant community, specifically the LGBTQ immigrant community?
Superintendent Daiber, you're the first to go. Kenny?
I early went on record to say I supported the city of Chicago being a sanctuary city, as well as the state of Illinois being a sanctuary state. I've opposed all the immigration policies that the Trump administration has advocated for because, we are a nation of immigrants and we should not change our heritage, nor should we change and discriminate against the LGBTQ community that may be immigrants into this country as well. So what will this administration do? I made this statement, is that, all people that are immigrants to the state of Illinois have the right to citizenship. And whether they are refugees that are here, or whether they are first-generation immigrants that have had offspring, and they are now here as naturalized citizens, they should all become citizens of the state of Illinois. If we uphold any measures in which we allow deportation of any residents, we will do one thing in this state. We will create a state of orphans, and we cannot do that. There is no dignity in sending parents to a country and leaving their children here for us to figure out how we would then better parent them. So as governor, I will uphold those rights of those immigrants. I will see that they are here. I will help them to naturalization, to citizenship, and I will help them on to a prosperous life as an Illinois citizen. And hopefully, many of those immigrants, whether they're part of the LGBTQ community or what community, that they will become business leaders in our communities and help lead the state of Illinois in the private sector.
Mr. Pritzker.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenny, and for the question. Let's start with recognizing the abomination that is the administration in Washington, D.C. of Trump-Pence, who are reversing the progress that so many of us in this room fought for undocumented immigrants and for the LGBTQ community over many years. So let's begin by saying, let's have a governor who's willing to fight, truly fight the administration in Washington, D.C. And that means standing up, of course, to enforce the Trust Act because, yeah, Bruce Rauner signed the Trust Act. It was a weakened Trust Act. There were other provisions in it, but we need to enforce it. And he's not been doing that. Then we need to strengthen the Trust Act by including provisions that will protect LGBTQ community members who are undocumented immigrants. And also, and I say this in this room hoping that you'll join me in this, I think we ought to have a governor who says that if they start trying to register Muslims, to ban them in this country, that all of us, no matter our religion, that we will go and sign up, all of us, as Muslims. But most important, I think, again, you're going to want a governor who has a history of standing up on this, not just a plan today, but someone who's spent decades fighting for the LGBTQ community and who believes strongly in immigration reform and standing up for undocumented immigrants in our state.
Senator Biss.
We passed something called the Trust Act. I was a proud co-sponsor of that bill, fighting for years to get it finally signed into law. And it was weakened, and I'm fighting now to strengthen it, to provide the kind of legal protections that a state can provide on the books to protect our residents from the vicious attacks from Donald Trump and his policies and his raids. But let's think about the LGBTQ community in particular. What is the specific challenge that undocumented residents, undocumented people here in Illinois face? A fear of interacting with official entities, a fear of having to hand over their personal information, a fear of having to sign up for things, a fear of having to give somebody some data that might result in one day that terrifying knock on the door. And so what we need to do as a state is to enact the kind of universal programs that don't require that form of interaction. There's a reason I'm fighting for single-payer health care. If we have a single-payer health care system in the state of Illinois and you don't have to go sign up at the Medicaid office, if you have a system that truly universally covers everybody, the LGBTQ members of the undocumented community will have health care, will be safe, will be covered. That's the approach that we need if we want to acknowledge the realities coming at us from Washington and the strengths that we have as a state government. We can provide services to communities who are currently being bullied, who are currently frightened to ask, who are not able to stand up for fear of what will be done to them. The state can provide a fundamental safety net that will be life-changing. That's what we're going to do when I'm governor of Illinois.
Mr. Hardiman.
On behalf of the Hardiman Avery Campaign for Governor and Lieutenant Governor here in the state of Illinois, we would work on making sure that undocumented members of the LGBT community have a pathway to citizenship. That's the best thing we can do for our policy. We push forth policy to make sure that's a reality for the undocumented people here in Illinois. That's my answer to that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we're going to make sure that happens one person at a time. And for those who don't know, my name is Tio. It means uncle in Spanish. So I'm asking everybody, if you have some Latino, vote for your uncle, because your uncle gonna take care of you, all right? Your uncle gonna take care of you. So I just wanna put that out there because I have to speak this way, but that's my answer to you. It's more complicated in reality, but we will work on a pathway to citizenship for undocumented members of the LGBT community, and that's what we would do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
You think about a vulnerable population. Think about how do we protect that vulnerable population. And it reduces the question a little bit to, how can we keep ICE from accessing our police data or a series of tactical issues, and that is not the America that we want. The question is, or should be, how do we make a path for citizenship for everybody in our country? If you're in America, you should be able to become an American. That's what we have to do. And the governor of the state can compel, I believe, the congressional delegation to support a national movement to provide a path to citizenship for everyone. Protecting the undocumented in Illinois or anywhere is going to be difficult. We need to give everyone a path to citizenship. Look at what we passed in the state of Illinois, the Trust Act. You look at what we have here in the sanctuary city in Chicago, where we still allow ICE to have access to gang database information that is a backdoor into the deportation effort. We can't let that nation of immigrants become that nation of orphans that Bob talks about. That's not who we are as a country. The truth is that President Trump and Vice President Pence have no sense of what's going on in the world. They have no idea that there are places where you can be put to death for the things that you can do freely here in the United States. So when someone arrives on our shores, not just as an undocumented immigrant, but someone fleeing the oppression that comes in hundreds of countries around the world, we need to welcome them here and give them a place of refuge and save their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Kim.
According to a recent Voice of Youth study, 1 in 10 young people will experience a period of homelessness in a given year. Additionally, LGBTQ youth represent 40% of youth who experience homelessness. Given that this is an issue across the state, especially in rural areas, what are ways you plan to use your role to educate communities on inclusion, allocating resources for youth experiencing homelessness, and reducing barriers to shelters, government resources, and other systems?
Thank you. And Mr. Pritzker, you're the first up.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Double mic'd, I don't need. Thank you. Well, first of all, let's recognize we have a broad problem of providing housing across our state. We need to make sure that we're providing not only affordable housing for everyone, but also making sure that we're, in particular, addressing the challenge of homeless youth, many of whom, by the way, have been kicked out by their own families, LGBTQ youth, who are on the streets and in need of services and in need of homeless services. Bruce Rauner cut those services. Bruce Rauner is who we ought to be focusing our attention on, all of us. The fact that he is unwilling to fund the services that are so badly needed, and unwilling to, he spends all of his time downstate, where he thinks he's more popular than he is here. But the truth is, he ought to spend his time downstate helping in communities across our state, Carbondale and Peoria and Rockford, all across our state, making sure that those communities are living up to the obligations that they have under the laws of the state of Illinois. But providing those mental health services, those homeless services, that's going to be critical for the next governor, making sure that we're stepping up to the plate, funding that budget, and providing that safety net. That's what I'll do as governor.
Senator Biss.
Bruce Rauner sucks. And if you think that the level of homelessness among Illinois residents, among Illinois youth, and among LGBTQ Illinois youth was acceptable before Bruce Rauner was governor, then all we ought to talk about is how much Bruce Rauner sucks. If you think it wasn't acceptable, then we ought to talk about how much Bruce Rauner sucks and how we're going to fix what went wrong before he became governor. So let me say a word about that. The cuts that he caused, the cuts that were a consequence of this budget impasse are unacceptable and vicious. And we need to not just restore those to where they were before, we need to end homelessness in Illinois. That's a thing you can do in 2017. That is a thing that is possible. And part of that is about innovative ideas like the tiny homes movement. Part of that is just emulating the things that have worked in other states that have really taken on this problem in a fundamental way. Part of that is about passing a bill in Springfield today that would remove the really, really wrong-headed ban on rent control that stops a place like Chicago from enacting rent control to make housing more affordable. But in order for the state to fund services in the way that services ought to be funded, we need to change our tax code. We have one of the most unfair tax codes of any state in the union. We are one of only 4 states whose constitution says you gotta have a flat income tax, and we have a growing financial sector that gets off scot-free. When I'm governor, we're gonna have a progressive income tax. We're gonna fight to tax the financial sector, and we're gonna use these progressive revenue sources to fund human services for people in need.
Mr. Hardiman.
When it comes down to the issue of homelessness, just on Thanksgiving, myself and one of my colleagues, Mr. Eric Russell, we got a chance to go out and feed, I ain't gonna use the word feed, we got a chance to go out and support a lot of homeless people here in Chicago by taking them food over here on Canal Street and downtown around Wacker and then all the way on the north side. It really hurts my heart when I see homeless people being displaced throughout the state of Illinois on a regular basis. And like Senator Biss said, homelessness is something we could end immediately. There's 1.7 million people in Illinois living in poverty right now. And we have to change those numbers. As your governor, I would like to put a big dent in that number, but at the same time, everybody's talking about the progressive tax, which I support that as well. But the truth of the matter, you will not get a progressive tax, and Illinois is going to take a constitutional amendment, which may take a couple of years. House Bill 453 is on the table right now, and we can sign that into law, and that would be $3 billion taxing the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Chicago Board of Options, and the Chicago Board of Trade, and we can use those funds to help end homelessness in Illinois, and we can make this a reality. So that's what I'm talking about, policy when it comes down to homelessness, and that's it for me. All right.
Mr. Kennedy.
So the largest overnight shelter for homeless youth in the city of Chicago is the Chicago Transit Authority. Yeah, it's true. I don't know if you spent any time on the lakefront, but earlier this summer, I was out there, and the city, Mayor Emanuel, removed the homeless people living under the Wilson Avenue Viaduct. Now, just about a block away in Lincoln Park, they fenced in this other area, and they put in this benching and all sorts of amenities for a dog run a block away. That's the community that all of us are part of. We're all part of that. We can solve the homeless youth issue. We can take care of young people if we want to. We need to get rid of Bruce Rauner, but that's just the start. The fact is, the Democrats had a supermajority in the House of Representatives, a supermajority in the state Senate. They controlled the governor's mansion and did nothing to fix these problems. You've got a Democratic Party that's controlling the state, a Democrat who's the mayor of the city of Chicago, and we have a relentless attack on people of color in the city of Chicago and a relentless attack on poor people across the state of Illinois. We're doing nothing to educate parents, to let them know, to let young children know that the feelings that they have are feelings that other people have too. What they're going through is part of a larger community. Other people are doing it, and all we have to do is give them a sense of community and hope and survival, and we don't. Instead,
Your time?
Time?
Your. Superintendent Daiber.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I want to revisit the question because I think the question asked about homeless youth in the rural part of Illinois. And I didn't have an opportunity to introduce myself because I was late, but I come from that part of the state. And the thing that many people that have never lived in a rural area don't understand is that there's just not services like you have in a city. So how and where does a homeless rural kid go? Where do they go? How do they get a new pair of shoes? Well, I want to tell you how it happens. It happens because there's federal money that is allocated to each and every school, inner city school and rural school in the state of Illinois, and it's called McKinney-Vento money. It's by the federal McKinney-Vento fund. And I want to tell you something as governor you can't do. You cannot hold up the flow of federal money from the state, from the comptroller's office to the schools for services as was done. You can't do it. As governor, you got to see that those federal monies are flowing so that those homeless kids in those rural areas get the services, so they get a coat when it's getting cold outside, and gloves and new shoes, and as they mature through the year, maybe another pair of shoes, because that's how they are clothed. And they also get their medical services from these federal funds of McKinney-Vento. But it comes directly from the school identifying their need and that they're homeless. So we have a homeless count in the state of Illinois every year. And we have a very, very important thing happening. We are beginning the census. And when we do an accurate census in this state...
You can finish your sentence.
Sure. We've got to have a rural census because it's what brings in more federal money to provide more services. And I could go on with explanations about taking care of poverty in rural areas because it's my passion.
Thank you. Our last question is not a question. It is 90 seconds of closing remarks. For that, we are going to start with Senator Biss.
Thank you for participating in this forum. Thank you for the questions. Thank you to the people who submitted questions. Thank you, Brian, for your role as relentlessly patient moderator. These questions were so good. And they were good in part because they were broad. You know, one word we didn't hear was the word intersectionality. But this was on some level the intersectionality forum. This is a forum about the connection between LGBTQ justice and racial justice, the connection between racial justice and gender equity, the connection between gender equity and economic justice, And fundamentally, communities that are marginalized, communities that are under attack, communities that are not part of the dominant privilege paradigm need us to stand together and build a movement of profound solidarity to lift everyone up and build a genuinely just society. That includes building an economically just society. We have a kind of economic inequality that has been punishing and vicious to the LGBTQ community in particular because of those phenomena of privilege and those systems of oppression. I am so appreciative of the work that I have had the opportunity to do with so many people in this room, of the fights that we have waged together, of the battles we've fought together, of the victories we've had together, of the setbacks we've endured together, and the way we've learned together how to come back even stronger together. I'm asking you to stand with me one more time. If you believe that we should have elections and not auctions, if you believe that votes should be earned and not bought, I'm asking you to stand with me and build a truly just, equitable Illinois. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hardiman.
Okay, Tio Hardiman, once again, I want to thank you all for inviting me to this forum today. It was a delight to be here. Machiavelli once said, one thing that's hard to do in life is to introduce a new idea. When people are used to doing the same thing over and over again, they become comfortable. Right now, the machine politics in Illinois, that's the reason why we have Bruce Brown in office right now. I'm asking everybody to take a good look at Hardiman and Avery's campaign. Our campaign is powered by the people. Your voice is our mission, sincerely, and we have a 2020 plan which represents a perfect vision for the good people here in Illinois. Part of that plan includes supporting women's rights, supporting the LGBT community, and also raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I've been on the front line standing up against criminal justice, standing up for criminal justice reform, standing up for the minimum wage. I'm the only candidate sitting up here that worked for minimum wage, many, many years ago when I was a teenager, so I've done that by experience. I'm experienced in leadership. I also plan to reduce homicides in Chicago by 50% with a non-traditional approach, and that's organizing the community around that issue so these mothers can stop crying and stop worrying about what's going to happen to their sons and daughters. I'm a proven leader in the community for over 25 years. I know right now we did an internal poll. Hardiman and Avery, we're polling at 18% of the state vote in spite of all the big money candidates. I'm not going to bash nobody up here. The only time you're going to see Tio take the gloves off, if somebody was to challenge my petitions, then I'm going to take the gloves off, all right? And we're going to make sure we make some noise out here. So the reality is that we're running. We ran before in 2014 and secured 30% of the state vote. That's substantial, my people. And if 30% of the people were to vote for Tio Hardiman and Patricia Avery, once again, we can win this primary hands down. And I would like to be seen as a non-billionaire candidate. I would like to be seen as an alternative to big money people, but I do have a good relationship with these gentlemen up on this stage. I just want to make that clear. And I'm just being honest with you, okay? If you want to do something different, I'm trying to encourage everybody here to think out of the box.
Hardiman?
Support Tio Hardiman.
Oh, let him go, let him go.
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Y'all are great to show up tonight. I have to say that. So few people show up, and y'all did, and that's very encouraging to all of us. Think about the questions, though, that were asked. How do we deal with a set of parents who are worried what's going to happen to their child? How do we take care of children who are being oppressed in their grade school? How do we deal with access to university and why are people graduating at a declining rate compared to the coast? How do we deal with people who are retiring, people who are aging out, who are worried about health care and housing? That's the sign of oppression. That's reflective in our city government, where there's a relentless attack on people of color, where we close schools, rob a community of its heart and soul so there's nothing left to fight for, where we reduce the number of community police officers and crime increases. 1,000 fewer cops in Chicago than we did 10 years ago, where we allow hospitals and healthcare clinics and mental health facilities to close, and where we allow grocery stores to close so people live in a food desert. All of those things are part and parcel of the questions that were asked tonight. And we live in a state where the economy is shrinking and average household income jumped 11%. That's nearly impossible, but it's a relentless attack on the poor, and we're pushing them out of the state. We cannot be part of that anymore. It's time for us all to gather and stop the slaughter that's occurring in this city and stop the oppression that Governor Rauner is bringing on the poor in this state.
Superintendent Daiber.
Well, thank you for having me, and once again, I apologize for being late. So I didn't officially introduce myself. I'm Bob Daiber. I'm a downstate candidate. I'm from Southern Illinois, Madison County. I'm currently the regional superintendent of schools, and my office is in Edwardsville, Illinois. And there's something I just want to share. You know, there's many people that ask the question about, are members of the LGBTQ community different than other members of society? And you may ask, is the guy from Southern Illinois different from people in Chicago? You know, no, we're not different. We're all alike. We're all members of this society. There are people in this administration that look at, there's a divide from people from downstate and from the city. And for 22 years that I've served in government, I've served for one reason, and that is to bring people together. And what my administration is about uniting all of Illinois. It's about decreasing the polarization of society, decreasing the polarization of the state, and reuniting Illinois and moving it forward in the 21st century with a balanced budget, a progressive income tax, and an equal rights amendment that includes this community. Many of the issues we talked about tonight can all be resolved if the next administration will pass an equal rights amendment, which I campaign strongly on. I want to just share this also. You know, for 22 years, I served in local government, and I believe very strongly that an individual that has experience of serving people in government would become governor, they would understand how to serve you. You know, the governor that we have today never served a day in office. He just didn't get the job. He got there. It was something he thought he wanted to do. Okay? He hasn't done a very good job of it. And we need to look to the future of the type of person we want to be governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Mr. Pritzker.
Thank you to Brian, to all of you for attending, and for the many hosting organizations that are here tonight. Let me begin by just saying to all of you, I am so proud to be standing on a stage with a group of Democrats, all of whom would make a better governor than Bruce Rauner.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so proud to have the support of so many of the leadership of the LGBT community. I have stood with you on so many important issues, and as a result, people like Art Johnston, the co-founder of Equality Illinois back when it was the Illinois Federation for Human Rights, is supporting me, and State Representative Greg Harris, who's been a leader on these issues in Springfield, a member of the community, and with whom I work to try to get those final votes to put marriage equality over the top when we finally did that in 2015. Now, I believe that we need a governor who has a history of getting big things done. And I think you ought to ask about all the candidates, what were they doing before they were running for public office to get big things done, to make people's lives better all across the state of Illinois? I've been doing that for decades for the LGBT community, with you, standing with you. And I've been doing it for families all across the state. And I ask you tonight to consider that, and to consider the following question. Who do you think has the best shot at beating Bruce Rauner? Because we can't afford to let Bruce Rauner have 4 more years and work with his partner in Washington, Donald Trump and Mike Pence. So I ask for your support tonight. I ask you to support somebody who has been with you for decades.
Mr. Pritzker,
thank you very much.
So before I officially thank the candidates and release them, I want to turn to the audience, and I want to ask members of the audience If you plan to vote in a primary election or the general election next year, please stand. And I'm asking in Peoria for Marcus to get the group up, and for Brandy in the Quad Cities, and for Tara in Carbondale, Harold in East St. Louis. Gentlemen,
Thank you.
we represent the LGBTQ and allied communities across the state of Illinois. We live in every ward in this city. We live in every county in this state. And we promise you, whoever wins to become the governor of Illinois from either party, we will hold that person accountable to making sure Illinois is a more fair and equal place for LGBTQ people, and to make sure that Illinois lives up to her promise of being a fair and equal place for all people. Thank you.
That's a great move.
Undoubtedly, there are more questions. The candidates will be in the fellowship hall to answer the other questions that you have. Thank you all.